This world is pretty amazing, and there are lots of things to learn. If you want to spend your life studying, you really are never going to come to an end of what you can study and what you can discover. But there are certain pieces of knowledge, certain things that are absolutely essential. If you don't know them, you really can't know anything else. And one of the things that you have to know anything is really who God is. The Bible puts it like this. It says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. If you don't have an awe of God, if you don't know who God is, it's going to be hard to understand anything else. A second thing that is important to know if you're going to know anything is who you are. You need to know God, and you need to know yourself. Now, if you're going to know yourself, a lot of people would tell you that you got to go inward and you got to just spend a lot of time looking inside to know who you are. The Bible's answer, though, to this question, who are you, begins in a different place. If you're going to know who you are, you don't start by going inward. You start by looking upward. God is the one who created you, and so God gets to define who you are. And He defines who you are in the first couple chapters of Genesis. One of the things that He tells you is that you're not God. Seems simple, but that is incredibly hard for us to understand and appreciate. We ruin most of our lives by trying to be God. The second thing, though, that He tells you in Genesis 1 and 2 is that you are not an animal. You're not God, and you're not an animal. Now, there are a lot of things about you that you have in common with animals. And it sounds funny to say that, but there are really two categories of beings in the universe. There is the non-created and there is the created. God's the only non-created. He's the only one in that category. The rest of us, we are created beings. And so we have that in common with the animals. We are created by God. But in Genesis 1, God makes it very clear there's also something distinct. And if you look at Genesis 1, it's a very carefully constructed chapter, and it all leads up to God's creation of man. It's very quick. God makes, God makes, God makes. Then when He creates man on day 6, everything slows down. Everything pauses. Moses starts writing poetry because the creation of man is so significant. And what he says about the way in which God created man is important to understand if you're going to understand yourself. Moses says man was created in God's image. There is a special glory to being a human being. We alone are created in God's image. And he says that over and over and over again. Man is created in God's image. What does it mean to be created in God's image? Well, we could spend a lot of time talking about it, but let's make it simple. We were called to represent God here on this earth. You can look at the commands that God gives after He describes us being created in His image. He says we're created in His image. Then He says rule and subdue. We're to exercise authority over this planet. What are we to do? What was God doing in Genesis 1? He was bringing this world into submission, making it a place where humans could flourish. And He put us, man, in this world as His image. In other words, we are to serve, in a sense, as His representatives. We're to image God as we rule over this world, make this world a place where God's creatures can flourish. And then He talks about us bearing fruit and multiplying. And really what we were to do is to fill this earth with little images of God. And then Genesis chapter 2, you see, puts us in this garden as a kind of priest. And we were to expand the borders of the garden so the whole world could be filled with God's special presence, where man and God could enjoy a unique relationship with one another. And this whole world would be a place of blessing, which of course we know is not how the world is now. But if we're going to understand what's wrong with us, we have to understand how God created us to be, who we were in the first place. And understanding who we were in the first place begins with understanding, 1, we're not God. 2, we're not animals. We are privileged. We alone are made in the image of God.